The moment Vale Dorn's fist connected with Rethkos's sternum and sent the Guild Lord's son sliding across the classification mat, the arena went still. Then the referee raised a red flag. Uncontrolled type. Property damage. Disqualified. There was no property damage. The mat was untouched. The crack along the far wall had been there since the previous winter. But the referee's voice carried across every speaker in the Caldrith classification hall, and the result was logged before Vale could open his mouth. System, classification result, Vale Dorn. Rank, disqualified. Type, uncontrolled. Certification void. The hall buzzed. Rethkos climbed to his feet at the edge of the mat, rubbing his chest, and smiled. Behind the judge's bench, Guild Lord Marin Kos signed the formal order without looking up. One stroke of his pen. 30 years of the Dorn family's work ended in 30 seconds. Vale stood in the center of the mat and looked at the stamp, disqualified in red across his file. Then he looked at the Guild Lord. The Guild Lord did not look back. That afternoon, licensing authority officers arrived at the Iron Step Dojo on Ashfield Lane, unregistered training facility, operating under a voided instructor's license. The order had been filed before the tournament even started. Vale's father, Seraph Dorn, a man who had trained 50 licensed fighters across 30 years, stood in his own doorway and watched 3 officers paste a closure notice over the entrance sign. He didn't speak. He just looked at the sign for a long moment after they left, like a man reading a sentence he'd expected and still wasn't ready for. Vale's younger sister, Lyra, had a classification ceremony scheduled for 3 weeks out. She was 17 and had genuine talent, cleaner technique than Vale had ever had, and everyone in the district knew it. The notice came for her the following morning. Pending, family record flag. Lyra Dorn's classification suspended indefinitely, pending resolution of disqualified status on file. The Guild Lord's office sent no explanation. None was required. Vale walked the district alone that night. No guild, no certificate, no dojo, no legal path to any of it while that stamp sat on his record. At the corner of Ashfield and the Market Road, 3 men from a rival crew recognized him from the tournament broadcast and decided to test the uncontrolled type for themselves. The second one landed a clean hook across his jaw before Vale put all 3 of them down. He stood over them in the rain and felt the split of his lip and something else underneath. Not rage, not satisfaction. Something that had started counting. System, pressure token acquired. Total, 001/500. Condition, absorb an impact and continue. Iron Blood Sovereign accumulates endurance, not victories. He didn't know what that meant yet. He got up, and he kept moving. Over the next 3 years, Vale Dorn took hits. He wasn't looking to lose. But a man stamped disqualified in the lower district of Caldrith without guild protection was a target by definition, and targets got tested. Debt collectors with enforcement authority. Crew bosses who needed someone to set an example on. Amateur fighters who wanted a story about putting down the dojo kid. He fought in alleys, in market squares, in the loading docks behind the granary, where 2 guilds ran unlicensed trials they pretended didn't exist. Some nights he won clean. Some nights he won bleeding. A few times, early on, he didn't win at all, but he always got back up, and every impact he absorbed and stood back up from added another token to whatever the system was building inside him. He worked. He trained in the mornings on whatever floor he was renting, body weight, and whatever resistance he could improvise. He ate simply. He didn't drink. He wasn't building toward anything he could name yet. He just kept moving, kept absorbing, kept getting up. The pressure token stacked. At token 50, his body's relationship with impact shifted. Not numbed. He felt every hit. But his system began processing force differently, like bone and sinew were cataloging it and filing it somewhere below conscious reach. At token 100, he noticed he was anticipating faster. Not through strategy, nothing planned. His body would tilt before his mind had fully tracked a telegraph strike, reacting to something he hadn't consciously registered yet. At token 200, he stopped taking damage that mattered. The same combination that had once put him against a wall for 4 seconds now moved past him like something he'd rehearsed 100 times. Opponents threw, and he tilted, and they missed, and they adjusted, and he tilted again. Eventually, they stepped back and did the math. At token 250, fighters with licensed ranks stopped wanting to step to him in the street. Then came token 300. He was breaking up a shakedown behind the spice market. 2 guild enforcers, 1 merchant, nothing complicated. When the first enforcer threw a hook at his temple, and Vale watched it arrive. Not fast, not slowed. He watched it arrive the way you watch something you've already seen happen. His body already shifting before the decision to shift reaches mind. The hook landing on nothing. The enforcer stumbling past him in empty air. System, pressure token acquired. Total, 300/500. Impact read, unlocked. All incoming strikes, visible 0.4 seconds before point of commitment. Active. The second enforcer stared. Vale rolled his neck once and waited. The man turned and walked away. After that, word spread. Not useful word, not an invitation to join a guild or file for reinstatement. Just the fact that the disqualified Dorn fighter was something that couldn't be hid anymore. The people who employed fighters took note and steered carefully around it. He reached token 492 the night a 6-man crew from across the river arrived at a warehouse belonging to a family he'd been buying breakfast from for 2 years, carrying a fabricated debt notice and an enforcement order. He went in. He took 1 solid hit to his shoulder in the first exchange, then worked through the remaining 5 and walked out 8 minutes later. The crew did not follow. System, pressure token acquired. Total, 492/500. 8 short. Vale looked at the number and felt the weight of what sat underneath it. 3 years of impact for 192 times the world had struck him, and he'd gotten back up, all of it compressed somewhere beneath his sternum, waiting to go somewhere. He filed the Grand Circuit entry the following morning. The Grand Circuit was Caldrith's official ranked combat invitational, the highest legitimate platform in the city, broadcast to every licensed guild hall. Normally, only certified fighters could enter, but buried in the circuit's founding charter was a clause no one had ever invoked: open challenge entry. Any citizen could file a formal challenge against any ranked fighter on the circuit roster, provided the challenger bore no criminal conviction. A disqualified classification stamp was not a criminal conviction. Vale had checked twice before he slept on it and checked again. He filed the challenge against Aldrin Vol, the number 1 ranked fighter in Caldrith, the man who had stood in the classification hall 3 years ago and told every camera in the building that the disqualified Dorn fighter was exactly what the stamp says: uncontrolled, untrained, a liability to anyone around him. The filing hit the guild lord's desk within the hour. Marin Koss apparently found the whole thing amusing enough to approve personally. He had Aldrin Vol issue a public statement accepting the challenge. Let the disqualified street fighter step onto the Grand Circuit floor. Let everyone see. Let them see. The night of the Grand Circuit match, the hall was full. Guild leaders took the premium seats. Ranking board officials filled the center box. Guild Lord Marin Koss sat in the upper gallery with Reth beside him. Aldrin Vol's introduction ran 45 seconds and covered 17 individual ranked wins over 4 years, including 3 consecutive title defenses. In 3 years of professional matches, no opponent had touched him cleanly. Vale Dorn entered without introduction. The circuit had no file on him beyond his name and the disqualified stamp in red. Aldrin smiled and rolled his shoulders. The opening bell rang. Aldrin moved first, a testing combination, the kind he used to read opponents in the opening 10 seconds. Left jab, right cross, shoulder feint. Vale watched all 3 of them arrive. He moved once, minimally, and all 3 missed. Aldrin blinked. He threw a longer sequence, 5 strikes, faster from varying angles. Vale walked through all 5 like he was moving through a room he'd already memorized. The crowd went quiet. Aldrin pulled back and reassessed. He was S-rank, certified the best in the city. He had technique, speed, tactical flexibility, 2 decades of competitive experience. He began varying his patterns, breaking his own rhythm deliberately, mixing feints with committed strikes, attacking from angles he'd never used publicly. It didn't matter. Impact, Reed showed Vale, every single one of them 0.4 seconds before they existed. He didn't hit back. He just didn't get hit. 4 full minutes. Aldrin Vol threw everything in his catalog at a disqualified fighter who hadn't returned a single strike, and the hall made sounds that weren't quite cheering. Confused, unsettled sounds, like the audience had watched something the rankings couldn't account for. Then Aldrin, breathing harder than he'd breathed in 4 years of matches, committed everything into one final charge. A full force shoulder rush combined with his signature overhead right, the combination that had ended 8 of his last 12 bouts. Vale planted his feet. He took the shoulder rush directly to the chest. System, pressure token acquired. Total, 500/500. IRONBLOOD Sovereign, active. Sovereign impact, loaded. All 500 accumulated pressure tokens discharging at point of contact. Classification, unranked / above force / the IRONBLOOD. One strike. Vale's right hand moved from his hip to Aldrin Vol's sternum in a motion that looked, from the gallery, almost casual. The arena measurement system registered the impact and displayed an error. Arena system, output exceeds measurement ceiling. Result, above measurable force. Aldrin Vol went backward 6 meters and sat down hard against the far wall. Conscious, not getting up. Silence. Then the ranking board official in the center box leaned forward and said something quietly to the man beside him, and that man pulled up something on his panel, and his face changed. System log, Combat Licensing Authority, document reference 14D, signed Marin Koss, Guild Lord. Official classification order, Vale Dorn. Rank, disqualified. Type, uncontrolled. Filed, classification tournament, year 47. Authorized by Marin Koss. The panel broadcast the document to every screen in the hall. Beneath it, the IRONBLOOD Sovereign system had appended a second line automatically. System, causal trigger for IRONBLOOD Sovereign, documented. Institutional disqualified stamp filed under fraudulent grounds by licensing authority. Token accumulation period, 1,097 days. Total impacts absorbed and continued, 500. Sovereign class, active. Record log, permanent and unalterable. Filed to Caldrith Combat Licensing Authority, Grand Circuit Registry, City Hall Archive. Marin Koss looked at the screen from the upper gallery. His signature was on that document on every screen in the building. Every guild leader could read it. Every ranking board official. Every camera broadcasting the Grand Circuit live across the city. And that signature was, according to the system log, now permanently appended to the city's own registry. The exact event that had triggered the IRONBLOOD Sovereign class. The order that was supposed to bury Vale Dorn was the thing that had made him. Koss came down from the gallery himself. He walked to the circuit floor, past Aldrin Vol still sitting against the far wall, past the ranking officials who had all found things to look at on their panels, until he stood in front of Vale. He held 2 documents. Iron Step Dojo, Ashfield Lane. Title Restoration. Instructor's License Reinstatement, Seraph Dorn. Effective immediately. Below that, Lyra Dorn. Classification Suspension, lifted. Ceremony rescheduled. First available date. Koss set both documents on the circuit floor in front of Vale's feet. And then, in front of every camera in the Caldrith Grand Circuit Hall, Marin Koss went to one knee. Vale looked at the man kneeling. He looked at the documents. He picked them up, folded them carefully, and put them in his jacket. He walked out of the hall without looking back. 3 days later, the Combat Licensing Authority of Caldrith was dissolved by City Hall order pending a full audit of classification tournament records spanning the last 8 years. 42 falsified, disqualified stamps were identified and overturned. Koss was barred from entering any circuit event for life. Aldrin Vol's ranking page was updated with one new entry in the loss column. Beside it, the arena measurement system had written, for the first time in 400 years of circuit history, opponent class, above measurable force. And on Ashfield Lane, the Iron Step Dojo reopened. Seraph Dorn hung the sign himself. Lyra Dorn had her classification ceremony the following week and tested as A rank. the highest score recorded at any Calder's ceremony in 11 years. Vale wasn't there for it. He was already gone. No fixed address, no guild affiliation, no rank on any board in the city. Just unranked / above force / the Ironblood. Exactly what he'd always been, and exactly what the stamp had always known.